pan-Yoruba socio-cultural group, Afenifere, Northern Elders Forum, and the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center have backed moves by the two chambers of the National Assembly, the Senate and the House of Representatives, to ensure that the executive arm of government adopt immediate steps to address the rising wave of insecurity in the country. The groups have shown their combined weight in support of the House of Representatives motion inviting President Muhammadu Buhari to explain what his administration is doing to combat the worsening insecurity challenges in the country. They also endorsed the call by the Senate for the removal of the service chiefs. In addition, the Northern Elders Forum have also called for the president's resignation for the same reason. Also on Tuesday, the governors of the northern eastern states backed a call by their Borno State colleague, Professor Babagana Zulum, on the federal government to hire mercenaries to fight Boko Haram in the region. We talked about it yesterday. Looks as though they were listening about mercenaries. Voila, we're there.
Well, Governor Zulum did make that request already.
Okay.
And I do think that he should be paid to what he's saying because he ought to know. He has direct, interface. There's been attempts on his life. So I think definitely he should be paid. And we've tried that before, successfully. So it's time to go back to the drawing board. And I like the fact that all these pressure groups are lending their voice to this general chorus of outrage about the security problem, because it's not about the Northeast, it's about the whole of Nigeria. We will all go up in flames if this is allowed to continue. And I also congratulate the House of Representatives for doing their job. It is their job to perform the oversight function over the activities or inactions or lapses of the executive. So I think that request for the president, invitation to the president, is in order. Although it was quite a rowdy session, there were several reps who disagreed, saying that security issues are confidential. And I take that point, but we do have deliberations of the House of Reps that do not go public. They're called executive sessions, so maybe that could be done. Or the president doesn't have to divulge every single detail, but it just goes to show accountability. I think it's important at this point. And I completely support the motion that was moved by reps from Borno State. It's beyond an emergency at this point. I agree with all the measures that they suggested, including the Zambari farmers on the Anchor Borrowers Program, some kind of economic help. Also, we were talking yesterday about Alhaji Lai Mohammed, the Minister for Information, saying that there's a reluctance from some of our foreign partners, or should-be partners, to actually partner with Nigeria and supply arms, that we should develop our local content here. That was also raised in the House of Representatives. So I do appreciate the holistic view that the House of Reps is taking to this issue.
At least they have debates.
Yes, they do. I told you they do.
They do have debates, and that was why robust.
Well, first, let me say that it's heartwarming that the National Assembly, the lawmakers of Nigeria, at a time of very serious security emergency in the country, are speaking up. That is what they are supposed to do. They are not supposed to be bench warmers. They're supposed to show interest in what goes on in the country, and that can then form the basis for their original function, which is the making of laws for the good governance of Nigeria. In this case, it is security. So let's take the issues one by one. The House of Representatives resolved yesterday that the president must come before the National Assembly to give an account of the security situation in the country. Well, it was a resolution, and resolutions are advisory. They do not have, the effect of, enforcement. So to that extent, therefore, the president may choose to ignore them. And if he does that, he may not have done anything unconstitutional, because there's nowhere in the Constitution that we operate where the Parliament has the powers to summon the president. Now, that point having been made, however, I think that the president of Nigeria should accede to the request of the House of Representatives. We face an emergency, a situation whereby people are slaughtered routinely, and the Shekau faction of the Boko Haram even had the effrontery yesterday to come forward and say, look, we claim responsibility for the killings. And they supplied a different number. Government is quoting 43. There was some back and forth over 110. But, the Shekau faction of Boko Haram, they say they slaughtered 78 people. Now, That kind of situation just shows how bad the security situation in the country has become. And I think that the president should not rely on the constitutionality of a resolution or whether it has a force of enforcement or not. The time has come for him to step forward and address the country. Having given service chiefs a directive in July that, not directive, marching order, that they should take charge of the security situation in the country. And months later, we've seen that the plan to rejig the strategy has not worked, and that the Boko Haram, the terrorists, the bandits, the kidnappers, drug addicts, continue to humiliate the government of the day. Now, the Senate also expressed concern, and the Senate is saying the service chiefs must go. Now, this is an old debate. People have been saying these service chiefs must go and all that. But the president, as Garuba Shehu continues to argue, and as the former secretary to the government of the Federation argued, hold their positions at the pleasure of the president. If you look at the enabling law, which is the revised terms of service, conditions of service for military personnel, Section 110 thereof, Section 30 first, says that, look, these people can be appointed for 2 years, and that is renewable for 2 years. But if you go further, Section 11.08 and Section 11.09, it says that the president has the powers to further extend the tenure, irrespective of the Section 36 of the Armed Forces Act, which prescribes when you retire, okay? And that, the president has the powers. In fact, if you have retired, if your tenure has expired, the president can continue to keep you in that position. Now, that's one argument that government puts up. The second argument that they put up is that in a situation of emergency, it's not a good thing to change your service chiefs, right? Number three, Femi Falana, SAN, I think went to court. I don't know the status of that case now, saying that, look, those arguments are specious and that, the president, those people have overstayed their welcome. But the consensus among Nigerians is that, look, if you have a set of managers, if they are not delivering, why don't you try new people, try new ideas? That will bring new creativity, a new form of thinking into the process. It will also boost morale because these are, the soldiers themselves are demoralized. We've seen videos of people abusing the service chiefs and complaining about lack of equipment, lack of ammunition. Okay, why not just bring new people and boost morale, so that we stop this desertion? Because the real danger is that we'll wake up one day and, more soldiers will just desert the battlefield. The third issue that came up is Northern Elders Forum saying that President Buhari should resign. Well, that may be the wish of the Northern Elders Forum, as articulated by their Director of Publicity and Advocacy, Dr. Akim Baba Ahmed, but I do not see this president resigning just because the NEF says so, a group that had been dismissed by the presidency as a set of irritants.
All right. Thank you so much for that great insights, like you always get right here on the Rise News channel. That's all on News End. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Oddiri, Michael Wilson, and Aron Akerejola to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. It's always a delight having you on the Rise Morning Show. And now we've got Rotus Oddiri with us, giving us Africa Business Update. Over to you, Rotus.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. And good morning, Doctor. We kick things off with, we're seeing some, the Naira gaining on the parallel market. This is after the Central Bank, of course, sent out that circular saying that they were going to liberalize the receipts of remittances from the IMTOs, International Money Transfer Operators. So apparently on the parallel markets, the Naira is appreciated from about 500 to about 490. And it's expected, from what the BDCs are saying, speculators, Rufai, you were talking about speculators, they should behave themselves. They're going to be hit really hard if they don't sell off what they're holding, since they've been anticipating that the dollar is going to rise. So it looks like they've been checkmarked, or checkmated, excuse me, by this move from the CBN, because we understand that some selling took place, and so that's why we've seen the Naira appreciate. Again, it's only been about 24 hours. We will continue to monitor things, but so far we've seen an appreciation in the naira following the central bank's move to again liberalize those remittances, allowing individuals to collect cash if they wish, or direct transfers in dollars into their accounts from the diaspora through the international money transfer operator. So interesting development there. Now we move to this special business. Now we're going to stick here for a little while we go through this. So the central bank released is this circular, which is an introduction of central bank special bills. Now, I'll read through this. Central Bank of Nigeria hereby announces the introduction of special bills as part of its efforts to deepen the financial markets and avail the monetary authority with an additional liquidity management tool. These are the features. It has a tenor. Think of this like treasury bills. It's got a tenor of 90 days. There's a zero coupon. The coupon, of course, is interest paid on instruments like bonds. The applicable yield, that's the interest that is supposed to be earned, at issuance will be determined by the central bank. So we don't know what that yield is going to be. That's point B. Point C, the instrument will be tradable amongst banks, retail, and institutional investors. So, you and I can trade this bill amongst ourselves. Now, the instrument shall not, this is point D, the instrument shall not be accepted for repurchase agreement transactions with the CBN and shall not be discounted at the CBN window. Repurchase agreements are where I can tell Rufai or Doctor, I'm going to sell you a security and agree to buy it back at a higher price. That's just, transactions that take place between the financial institutions and the central bank and amongst themselves. CBN window, of course, is where, the CBN grants secured lending facilities and advances to banks and discount houses. So that's just the central bank established window. Point E, the instruments will qualify as liquid assets in the computation of liquidity ratio for deposit money banks. What that means is, if you think about the liquidity ratio, which is at 30%, banks are supposed to remain liquid in case of an emergency, right? So also capital adequacy ratio, when you think about, and I'm sorry to throw all these terms out, apologies, but what they're saying is that when the banks compute their liquidity ratios, which is the amount of liquid cash that they have in addition to assets that can be converted to cash, this bill can assist in that computation. Now, there was an initial circular that was released before this, where the CBN explicitly said that this bill was supposed to assist in giving banks some of what had been constricted from them through the cash reserve ratio. And Doctor has talked about this in the past. Remember, January of this year was when the cash reserve ratio was increased by 500 basis points from 22.5% to 27.5%. There have also been discretionary debits that have been made on the banks that have not complied with the central bank's loan to deposit ratio. So a lot of funds have been constricted from the banks, and they're just sitting in a vault, not earning any interest. So what the central bank in the first circular, which of course has been withdrawn and replaced with this one, what they said was, listen, what is in excess of the 27.5%, right? So think of it as 27 naira, 50 kobo of every 100 naira. What has been debited from you in excess, we will issue this bill to you, giving it back to you, and you can trade it. But of course, they've taken that out now, and they're just focusing exclusively on the fact that these special bills are going to deepen the financial markets and essentially improve liquidity, because it's another bill. Once again, think of it as a treasury bill, and think of the central bank's mandate in terms of price stability and monetary policy. These bills are supposed to control liquidity. So essentially, the central bank introduces a bill to the market. You and I pay money for the bill, and there's an exchange. They take liquidity out of the market, give the bill to you, you earn interest on it. So it's part of their liquidity management tool. They're adding another security. Let's look at treasury bills, the last auction from the 25th of November. This is now pointing to the issue of the fact that the central bank has not said what that rate will be. Now, some are saying, are we going to benchmark this rate, whatever it is, to the money market? And as you can see, we've talked about this several times, the rates are very, very low. We're looking in blue at the most recent stop rates, which is 90-day 0.0215, 182-day 0.09. I mean, the rates are they are very low. So this is the question now, the open question. What exactly is the central bank going to benchmark this special bill against when it comes to the yields? Because that is going to determine how much interest, and that, when I say interest, I don't mean to use a double entendre here. When I say interest, I mean actual enticements. How much interest is this bill is going to attract? So we'll see how that works. But by and large, the banks are going to be happy about this because they've been complaining about the amount of funds that have been constricted from them. We move on now to the President Buhari. There's a tweet from the presidency with respect to the national social investment program. President Buhari graciously approved the expansion of the NSIP programs, increase of Empower beneficiaries from 500,000 to 1 million. The JEEP, which is the Government Enterprise Empowerment Program, that has been increased by 1 million. Also beneficiary of the NHGSFP, National Homegrown School Federal School Feeding Program, also increased as well. So again, when you think about the impact of the pandemic and what's happened, this is a good move from the government in terms of increasing things. Also, by the same token, the Minister of Youth and Sports, Sunday Dare, he also sent out a tweet in Jos Plateau. They've signed an MOU with the ITF, the Industrial Training Fund, there it is, saying that they're going to train 23,000 youth, 600 youth in each state, in different vocational skills. These are good moves, but I'll tell you something. A conversation I had with Chris Hart, who is an analyst in South Africa, when we were talking about the unemployment rate in South Africa and talking about the issues there. Ramaphosa in South Africa also introduced job training programs. And Chris Hart told me on the Global Business Report, Rotus, you can train somebody until they are 40 or 50. Train them all you want. The key thing is that they have to be placed in a job. So we continue to see these announcements where they're training this and they're training that and they're training this. All these youth have to be placed in jobs. And that's our opinion.
I mean, Rotus, a lot of things to chew on. But for me, real quickly, this morning will be, kudos going out to the CBN. Yeah, finally, the CBN is doing what it ought to do. Because the truth has to be said. Monetary policy and fiscal policy, these are the levers that pull the economy and productivity. So when the CBN comes out to its responsibility and try to cushion the effect, yeah, there will be speculators. And like I sounded off the other day about speculators, they should calm down. But we should also get a system where the CBN can beat the speculators to his game, and that's what they've done. And you can see the effect of that. And I also like the special bill, policy probably coming out to the economy to bring in, some level of liquidity to stabilize things in the economy. Because at some point, the economy and the forex market was overheating. To get to 500 in the space of 2-3 days, speculators having a whirlwind, they're selling, having a great time with all that money. But you need to calm things out. And kudos to Emefiele for doing all of that. You made a very great point. I've always been a proponent of cash transfer and schemes like JEEP by the government and things like that. You know why? Because I saw the work it did in Brazil. Bolsa Familia, when Inácio Lula da Silva brought 20 million people out of poverty with just one scheme called Bolsa Familia. But my pain here is, yes, you can increase the number of people, you can train them, but the truth has to be said. Is it getting to the desired people? What is the mechanism of getting people of this scheme? Can I go online and check out a lottery and get on the scheme? Or is it because I have to know somebody or I have to have party affiliations like some allegations have been in the past? I mean, these are questions. Take, for instance, 774,000 jobs they wanted to give people in 774 local governments of the country after COVID. And I saw the list of people that were going to give those jobs, the people that were in charge of those jobs per state. We saw some people in Lagos State, for instance, and we know it smirked of the air of partisanship. And it shouldn't be that way, because this intervention should be pervasive. It should be ubiquitous in Nigerian society. Even me that I don't know anybody in governance, I should be able to get it, and that's the way it will work. And good point about jobs. We can train people from now till thy kingdom come. If you don't put them in jobs, if they don't start to earn in such a way that they can pay income taxes back to the government, then we are going nowhere.
Good point.
All right, Rotus, thank you so much for your insight this morning. Moving on to business update, Michael Wilson Johnson from London. Michael.
Morning. Mixed stocks in Asia Pacific, actually, given not quite a massive reaction to Wall Street. More record highs on Wall Street last night, which you already know about. Hong Kong's Hang Seng slightly lower. Here's an interesting one. Trading of Xiaomi shares in Hong Kong. This is the number 2 Chinese smartphone maker. They've been raising $3.9 billion on the stock market. Rather unimpressed about that. So the shares have fallen. And another one, this is Evergrande Property Services, a unit of the Chinese China Evergrande Group, dipped about 0.9%. They've actually just come to market. The problem is there that people are worried about competition. Elsewhere, globally, Salesforce has actually agreed to buy that messaging app Slack we were talking about last week. There's been a push to get Salesforce's company software offerings up to a standard where and a quantity where they can actually challenge Microsoft, and clearly something like Slack, which has put the focus at helping the focus on remote work is helping them. So that's a good wedding there, really, in lots of ways. Australia smashed its growth figures. The expectations of a 2.6% rise, and actually it rose 3.3%. So the lucky economy, as they call it, doing very well indeed. In the United States, now here's an interesting thing, the talks about the US stimulus package are apparently back on again. Yesterday, a group of bipartisan politicians put forward a $900 billion relief package. One senator described it as an interim proposal. If you remember what was happening in advance of the presidential election, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, between 2.2 trillion, and the Republicans were half a billion, or rather $500 billion program. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell was talking about a $1.4 trillion package. So we could see maybe a movement, at least they seem to be heading in the right direction. I've got some breaking news from the UK. Become the first country in the world to approve the new Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, could become available next week. Meanwhile, England has returned to this sort of tiered system, which is tougher than the national lockdown we've actually come out of. It just scraped through the House of Commons yesterday. 55 of Boris Johnson's party actually voted against it. More than 55 million people in this country. That's the hugest part of the population. About 95% of the population are in strictest duties and cannot mix indoors with people from other households. Shop prices are falling. We've showed you the demise of Arcadia and Debenhams, two famous ones there. There's a lot of discounts going on at the moment as people start to shop, and price of goods could be falling 3.7%, maybe 4% in December as we come up to Christmas. As far as the trade deal's concerned, that drags on. Of course, we're way beyond the October the 15th deadline. But Boris Johnson is worried that this may not happen. However, they've gone into what they call tunnel talks right now. EU is worried about state aid, it's worried about fisheries, and it's worried about the Northern Ireland Agreement. But as I say, does this kind of wording suggests that there may be some kind of deal roughly in the offing. Commodities, gold and silver enjoyed very bullish runs yesterday. Copper 2, 7-year high, which is actually good in terms of what's happening as far as the economy is concerned. Oil in the red as OPEC Plus have, as I said yesterday, they've decided to put off their discussions about supply until next Thursday. UAE and Kazakhstan want to increase supply because they depend so heavily upon oil as an income. That's the global view so far this morning.
Well, Michael, yesterday I asked you a question. We couldn't get around to it about Bitcoin, about digital currency. Now, yesterday it was Bitcoin, but we're told that Ether, which is the second major digital currency, is also doing well. This year alone, over 350%. And I was asking, what are the advantages that digital cryptocurrency will seem to have over gold? And do we see this as a kind of rotation, or just something that may not really last? And then secondly, I'd like to ask about Asia. I was reading a report saying that Asia has a historical record of very strong Decembers. Well, maybe in this particular year, as a result of the faster economic recovery that we have seen in those places. But what should investors be looking at? What kind of precautions should investors take, and what areas will be the best areas to invest in the Asian equity markets?
As far as Asia is concerned, I mean, I can't offer financial advice. I would just say that it would be a good idea to look at the kind of sectors that are doing quite well and then have them in a much broader portfolio. I think I'm not in a position to recommend individual stocks, and I wouldn't do that in any case because I think that's too dangerous. But I think if you're looking at developing economies, and certainly Asia has a number of developed ones, then it would be a good idea to go for the kind of stocks that are doing quite well. Not property stocks, not commercial property, but basically tech stocks, as far as that's concerned. My financial advisor, I would hope, would be looking at those kind of things. So I think it'd be quite wise to perhaps weight slightly more heavily. We had a statistic last week that most major portfolios have about 5% weighting towards Asia. The idea now is, and I think we're going to see more of that in 2021, is that people will be increasing that weighting. I'd suggest probably closer to about 20%. But once again, I can't offer advice. I don't pretend to. But I mean, that's just the general feeling that's happening right now. As far as Bitcoin's concerned, yes, nice to have a sort of currency which you can actually use out of the lien of central banks and so on. As far as a rival to gold is concerned, I just don't think it has achieved the kind of asset status that gold has had. Gold is a very, very, I mean, it doesn't look like it because you see these chunks of it, these ingots of gold, but actually there's a whole layer of trading in that, which is actually quite sophisticated. Bitcoin hasn't got to that kind of level yet. I would avoid it, quite honestly, because I don't understand how you actually do payments in something which is so volatile. In other words, if I'm buying something from you and my Bitcoin is suddenly 40% well, I talk about it does not really, nothing's got intrinsic value apart from gold, of course. But, you know, if it's down 40%, how on earth do we make payments with each other? It's far too volatile to become, to be depended upon as part of the payment system. I suspect, though, other digital currencies will emerge, and banks are actually quite keen. All central banks right now, including yours, are looking at digital currencies. Bitcoin, it's the leader of the pack, but it's still too volatile for my taste.
Right, Michael? I mean, when do you think it will, like Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations, things of value must pass through the value in use test and the value in exchange? Where do you think Bitcoin will pass through the value in use test and probably the value in exchange? And I want to also ask, we all saw a couple of years ago, they sold British home stores for £1 in the end. Now,
Green.
yeah, and now another high street store is coming down. Is this the end of high street stores? Because it looks as though they're not working. We're just hearing one story or the other. Now, Debenhams is going. Who's next?
Okay, so high street stores, if you are not agile and you are in a very, very fast-moving market, which is what young people's fashion is, then you're going to do very, very badly because you're going to be overtaken by online retailing. Now, it doesn't mean to say that there is no hope for for stores along the high street. I think people quite enjoy still meeting people and going to do a bit of retail therapy. They may not buy anything, but it's quite nice to walk along a high street and go into stores, wander around, have a feel of the material, maybe try on a few clothes and so on. That will eventually all come back. But what we're looking at as far as Debenham and Arcadia and the group of Arcadia is concerned is that shops were so far behind the curve. I mean, you could tell this even before the pandemic. I don't think much of it is to do with the pandemic. It's to do with the fact that they are both of those are retail operations that are out of date. Smart, savvy people actually get online and buy stuff. I was in our post office yesterday, and there was a great queue of people that had obviously been shopping on Black Friday and decided they didn't like what they bought. So the stuff had been delivered over the weekend, and then they're having to send it back. You know, that's the way things are at the moment. At least if you can go into a store, you can actually try something on and see if you like it there. So I think that'll probably continue. But these stores that you're mentioning, they were out of date long before the virus hit. As far as Bitcoin's concerned, I just returned to it. I'd say that it might get to having some kind of intrinsic value, but it's a long way from it right now, basically because the supply of it's so limited as well. And it's very, very difficult to understand. So I got two benchmarks about it. If it's volatile and difficult to understand, stay away.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate you for your time, Michael Wilson. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aron Akerejola joins us here. Aron, great to have you.
Yes, good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning to you, Doctor. More importantly, good morning to you, Tunde. It's a pleasure to see you this morning. And let's get straight into it. As it stands right now, looking at the outlook of COVID-19 globally, and when we look at the figures actually coming in, it is still grim at the moment. And we can actually see that although the rates of infection is literally beginning to plateau or beginning to wane, looking at the figures coming in, every single day. Yesterday, 598,554 were the numbers. It was down by 1%, but the deaths are still on the rise as we still speak. 12,811 were the number of deaths, up by 14%, and probably that's the push behind what we'll be talking about in a moment. But of course, for the latest on COVID-19, we can always check the arise.tv. We'll always get you can always get the latest update on COVID-19 there. But there is some breaking news actually coming in right now in the UK, and that is the fact that the vaccine being developed by Pfizer and the collaboration effort from BioNTech, the UK government have announced that in a matter of days, as a matter of fact, they say next week, people will begin to receive these jabs. We know they've ordered for about 40 million of those doses, and as it stands right now, the health department and the social department have said that they've gone through some rigorous testing and they've gotten the authorization to begin to roll out these vaccines. A spokesperson said this, and I quote from the UK government, that the government has today accepted the recommendation for the Independent Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 for use. This followed months of rigorous clinical trials and a thorough analysis of the data by experts at the MHRA, who have concluded that the vaccine has met its strict standards of safety, quality, and effectiveness. So as it stands right now, in a matter of days, just reminding people of this vaccine again and what it brings. If they can help us with that particular graph, we know that it has shown efficacy of 95%, and it's still a new technology, the mRNA technology, and you need 2 doses. So that means that if, as the UK have 40 million stockpiled, that is slashed into 20 million, because you have to get 2 doses to be able to hit efficacy. There are some few side effects, fever, chills, and some aches, and it still takes quite a lot of logistics to actually chill this and preserve this particular vaccine, and that's the cost there, about $20. But the thing is this: the UK have said by next week, people will begin to receive this jab. And also the EU are actually even pushing it even further. They said that they've actually also received the application from both Pfizer and BioNTech on their own vaccines, and they will be analyzing it, and they will have a meeting on the 29th to decide that of Pfizer BioNTech, and on the 12th of January, for the Moderna vaccine. So they are very confident that they should, in a matter of days also, or rather in a matter of weeks, also have this particular vaccine approved. That's what the EU are saying. Still talking about approvals of vaccines. Now bringing it down to Kenya. The president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, has charged the Minister of Health to go around China shopping for vaccines. We know China right now have 5 major vaccines in phase 3 trials and 13 in other phases, and even more in preclinical trials. And they've told them that go and shop for vaccines to be able to help our people, because we know that countries are beginning to stockpile these vaccines, are beginning to pre-book these vaccines, and Kenya are saying that they don't want to be left behind, even though they're not even sure of the data coming in from their own homegrown vaccine. And moving away from that to the UK, let's get back to the UK, because as it stood, of course, the month-long lockdown has ended, and the country is now waking up to a new 3-tier system of restrictions. And the rules of Tier 2 actually states that under the new system, although hospital venues will be allowed to open up until 11 p.m., which will last, while last orders will begin to come in at 10 p.m., only those that actually serve substantial meals can actually operate in the service sector. It means that pubs, bars do not have to close. And there are major restrictions actually coming in from that new Tier 2 system. Time might not permit me to break it down. But moving on to the US, we know that the hospitalization numbers that are coming in are beginning to get quite overwhelming. If they can help us with the data to see how things are actually playing out in the US in terms of COVID-19. We've seen that well over 13 million people, about 13.7 million people have been infected in the US yesterday alone.
over 183,831. As a matter of fact, the data actually says every single day in the month of October, U.S. recorded over 100,000 cases. Yesterday's data meant that they were up by 2%, deaths are up by 31%. We can see the hospitalization also up by 32%. And that has necessitated what some people are claiming, that President Donald Trump is to have a COVID-19 summit next week, Monday. And he'll be meeting with regulators, stakeholders in the bid to probably look at how things are playing out, while some critics are saying this might just be a coy way of twisting regulators to fast-track and approve some of the Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and even Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine candidates. We're not sure of what it will be, but on Monday, President Donald Trump, Vice President Pence will be meeting with regulators, we'll be meeting with stakeholders in the sector to begin to discuss about the vaccine.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
So I want to take you to England for that story you just shared now.
Yeah.
And Boris Johnson's majority, the vaunted majority that he won in the House of Commons, didn't make that much of a difference to him. There was so much rebellion from the Tory government.
Yeah.
And I have to make the point because I'm always sort of subtly lobbying for a parliamentary system in Nigeria. It just goes to show that the loyalty of legislators should be to their constituents and not to the party. They were representing their constituents, and I think they deserve kudos for that. Now, this whole tier system, tier 1, 2, and 3, seemed a lot clearer than the government has been able to manage recently with their jumbled messaging. However, they have come a cropper with tier 2, the sort of restriction on alcohol only to be served with a substantial meal. Why should a government minister be confused about Scotch eggs? So I want to ask you, Aron, is a Scotch egg a substantial meal or just a starter? I mean, let's decide it here and now.
Sorry, in the middle of me laughing, I lost track of the question.
It's ridiculous. Can they never get the messaging straight? It's so confusing. Look, little details like that. Not enough thought goes into all these policies. And where is the scientific backing? It all seems very random.
No, I must say that the UK government have done a very poor job in the messaging of restrictions, because even the MP, even the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson himself, has gotten this particular messaging all muddled up. So time and time again, but the truth is this, they've just been literally living on a wing of the prayer and hoping that some of these regulations, people that get to see them, if they can help us with that particular breakdown of the tier 2 system, people that get to see them, that can read them and maybe understand them, might be able to probably abide by them, because we can actually see that the tier 2 system means that you're on high alert from today. All right, meetings with friends and families, there are restrictions in terms of that, the bars, the pubs, then retail venues, work venues. It's actually very cumbersome. Tunde, if I were to actually even still break it down, social mixing outside of household or support bubbles will not be allowed indoors. The rules of 6 still applies, I must actually still say, and spectators will be allowed to watch sports in this tier 2 system, which is getting some people excited, with a maximum capacity of outdoor crowds of 50% of the capacity of the stadium, or 2,000 people, whichever is smaller, or the maximum of 1,000 people. And indoor events venues such as cinemas, casinos, bowling alleys can open and must be closed at 11 p.m.
Well, very quickly, I think that there are other dimensions of it that we can look at. It looks like the Prime Minister was going to win that vote anyway, and he did quite convincingly, in part because the opposition he got from his party, those 55 Tories in Parliament, he didn't quite get that level of opposition from the other parties. The Liberal Democrats, who have 11 persons in the House of Commons, for example, they abstained. Labour, I think, also abstained.
Yes,
so
they did.
There wasn't, that attempt to push it down. Because as Keir Starmer pointed out, he recognized that, yes, there may have been issues. The science may not have been properly explained. There may not have been enough communication, but that there is need to impose these restrictions. Because if you look at the rest of Europe and even Middle East, Iran, Czech Republic, Italy, Germany, where some form of restrictions have been imposed, even in France, the numbers have gone down. And with, the window that has been given for Christmas, it looks inevitable that to protect the people from themselves, these restrictions may have to be in place. Although, England is most affected, particularly the north of England, and restaurant owners are protesting. They're going to get, pub owners, they're going to get £1,000, but that's a one-off. And the Association of Pub Owners, they are saying, no, that is not enough. But the issue, of course, is about saving the people from themselves. And I hope there is a lesson that African countries can learn from that. If the NHS rolls out the vaccine this weekend, then Britain, the United Kingdom, will be the first country, the first Western country to begin to administer the vaccines. And I see something there also. The military is being called out, the army, the British army, to be part of this in administering the vaccines. And there, we see how useful a military institution can be in a country. We are here in Nigeria, we are complaining about the military not doing what they are supposed to do in terms of providing security. We are arguing over whether the military knows how to manage live bullets or blank bullets. But see, in some other countries, you find the military, the army, being integrated into the development process. They will be monitoring the information process. They will be helping to set up, vaccination centers. And I think that that's a model, lessons that we can see. Those 55 tourists, they followed their own conviction. If it was here in Nigeria, what we will be told is that, it is our party that is in government. Mm-hmm. And whatever the prime minister or the president brings to parliament, we will just follow and endorse it. Mm-hmm. But you have a parliament where people think and where they hold positions on the basis of what they think is good for the public or on the basis of what they think the government of the day should be doing. We can also learn a lesson in that regard.
But I think, Doctor, it must be emphasized again that the fact that the government in the UK have announced as of this morning that the vaccines will be, people will begin to get vaccinated as of from next week. Yes. Will certainly ease the minds of people, knowing that by spring, according to Matt Hancock, almost everyone in the UK will be vaccinated.
I mean, I know Matt Hancock probably now is over the moon, and probably Boris Johnson is listening to John Bon Jovi this morning, leaving on a prayer, but it's all fine this morning.